but they've certainly done a fantastic job on it, and Liz and I were over there last year to see them. Let's talk a little bit about people then. The people element. We've got to do it reproducibly, we've got to do it effectively, we've got to also do it efficiently. I notice a lot of Andy's talk is about, we've got to do it quickly as well as, we've got no business if we don't do it quickly. We've got to get these orders through, these changeovers done in a fast way. And what we're seeing now with, clinical trials packaging, which Liz will be talking about later, quite a lot of complex bits of kit coming onto line as well now. You've got to be able to change it quickly. And that's going to be done every single time. But the problem with this people element is that they're not consistent. They make mistakes. Their performance is very variable, right? If they come in like these two lads now this morning, Liverpool lost last night to Everton, they're mortified and thinking about the football instead of about the job. Sorry about that, lads, I couldn't resist it. Then they're not going to perform the way they did yesterday, when they beat Wigan 5-0 and they're full of joy. We are very, very strange creatures. We can also be distracted very easily. So the training, therefore, has got to be, the critical element. You can't just expect to put people on a packaging line and then ask them to line clear. But we did we not, Terry, for years? Packaging was always the Cinderella outfit. Bring them in from the highways and the byways, sit them on the packaging line, sit by Nellie, she'll show you what to do. Now, hopefully those days are long since gone. Detailed instructions are required of how to clean a line and how to check a line. And remember, they are two separate processes. It's not just a matter of telling people, do it, but how do I do it? How do I clean? How do I check? How does my cleaning and my checking differ from when somebody else does it? And if it's not written down and properly defined, and if we've not been trained against the properly written down and defined processes, we're not going to do the same things, and we're certainly not going to behave consistently. So showing people how is vital. One of the things that I have seen bring about a fantastic improvement in many companies now, and it always needs to be the same, when the job is done well, there are always pictures involved in all aspects of this. Provided the pictures are good. Now, I've seen pictures that just confused me, let alone the poor old operators working on the line. I couldn't work out what part of the line it was. They were all black and white and they were terribly quality. You need good quality photography, and you need somebody who knows the way around that. It's not an amateur's job to do that. But the key thing again is the poor old operators need to know exactly what to do and what is expected of them. But how do you know that the training's been effective? If the line clearance processes are good, well defined, but the training's been badly delivered or not properly understood, rogue risk is increased. Well, one way of finding out if your training has been ineffective is by getting a complaint back, having a recall, finding a critical incident before it's left the factory, having major deviations, line clearance deviations, people finding things online when running one order when you've left things on the line from another order. Right? It's not a good way of knowing that your training's been, or finding out how effective your training's been. That's finding out that it has been ineffective. But you need a way of ascertaining and confirming that it has been done and it has been done properly. So it is essential with this very critical operation to be able to demonstrate competency. The other thing is, training is a process, and in our industry we validate processes. Validation is very simply, it's just proving that the process works, demonstrating that it's effective, and that's absolutely essential for line clearance. How many people do it? How can line clearance training be validated? Well, we think we know of only one way in which it can be done safely, and we'll be talking to you about that this afternoon. Hotspots. How many people in their packaging operations would routinely identify or label hotspots on packaging machines? About a third, about a quarter to a third. Yeah, I would guess that's probably mirrors pretty well what we see in practice. For those of you who don't identify them, let me just say what hotspots are. Hotspots are locations on the line where you've found product or components before, you know, where you've had rogue incidents, DMP deviations, or parts which are notoriously difficult to clean. And what people do is they stick red discs, you know, with a reference letter or a reference number on the line and say, make damn sure when you're cleaning or when you're checking, or usually the two mixed up together, that you look in that place. Now, the danger with that is the danger that they found when they used to get security guards to go and check in with a barcode against a particular mark on a wall when they were patrolling factories at night. And what they found was, I mean, the objective of the exercise was to make sure that the security guard went on patrol. He did his patrols during the night rather than sitting there reading the paper, drinking his cup of tea. And what they found was, of course, that all that actually happened was the guys just walked round, wandered the barcode on the wall, and then went back and sat down and read the paper and drank the cup of tea. And that's the danger that occurs with focusing on hotspots. We've seen rogue finds that you wouldn't believe could have been missed because of focusing on hotspots. And if I leave you with one thing that sticks in your memory today, that is that rogues will occur where and when you least expect them. If you focus on one particular area, they will be somewhere else, by definition. Has to be. Strategies for hotspots. I mean, hotspot identification does have a place. The first thing is make damn sure that you do mention that position, that location, in your cleaning procedure and in your checking procedure. Make sure that pictures are taken of it and you put it into your training materials, for example. But don't let the operators focus only on hotspots. Don't let checkers focus only on hotspots, and establish a continuous improvement program which is based upon the elimination of those hotspots. Why are they hot in the first place? They're hot in the first place because you didn't cover over the hole that the tablets drop into. They're hotspots because you didn't actually sheath the cables in and tablets get stuck in them, I think I've mentioned before. Perhaps we can make sure that it doesn't become a hotspot by using compressed air to blast around the back of that particular thing. Perhaps we can put a guard in so we can see when we're blasting with compressed air exactly what we are doing and exactly what we are achieving. But don't go overboard on hotspot identification. Tends to be big initiatives within companies. Oh, hotspots, you know, it's the flavour of the year. Hotspot identification and marking on lines can be a recipe for disaster, right? Know the areas that are difficult to clean and manage them. Documentation. Well, I don't think, well, maybe one. I don't think, apart from once, I have ever seen a line clearance document, record, that I think is up to scratch. I don't think I've ever seen a thing that does the things that I've described here in terms of separating the cleaning from the checking, in terms of the provision of sufficient detail to enable operators to know what to do, what order to do it in, and supply sufficient information for people to be trained in a consistent manner. If I regard that as the documentation associated with line clearance, I've only ever seen one thing, and that was about last year, which was approaching, you know, reasonable for that. Usually it is appalling. Usually it's been adapted, it's been modified, it's had things bolted onto it. As when a problem occurs, we bolt another column on, another signature on, some other patch. You know, nobody sits down, fundamentally defines the process and takes it forward from there. It would be a tremendous investment if you did so. It would well be worth the time and resource committed to it, but companies don't see it that way because, well, we haven't had a rogue for ages. I mean, why are we going to start messing around with this? And sure as eggs is eggs, when you think you haven't had a rogue, that is the time you're most at risk, because what tends to happen is that concentration curve starts to go down and starts to dip. So, documents and instructions should follow the processes. Remember, the cleaning and the checking are separate processes. It must be done according to a checklist, according to the European Guide to GMP. I don't think what I see very often could be regarded as, well, I don't think it's a checklist, it's a list of equipment. But all the detail doesn't have to be in the instructions, right? Some of the lessons about designing your documents. You don't have to put all the detail in the instructions. You have got SOPs you can put things into for defining those processes. You have got training materials as well that you can use to put the detail into. Please, 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 please avoid too many signatures. You know, some of these things you see, there are pages of initials, you know, usually because there's been a major cock-up and everybody panics and says, right, I want everybody to sign for everything. You know, every single step that we do in every single process. You know, I would say to you that operators are not searching the line when they are signing. You take your eyes off that line to go to that document, you are not doing the job. Right? You need to know what the process is, how to clean that line, how to check that line. You need to be able to follow it through diligently with total concentration on what you are doing. You do not want distractions. Filling in a form is a distraction. So the signature or the initials should confirm the completion of a series of steps, okay? Not a single step. Right? I have cleaned the cartner, for example. I have checked the case packer, for example. Okay, I'm going to finish off with this one then, which is management of line clearance deviations. There is a massive amount of variation throughout the industry. We visited a company, it was in Holland, last year? No, it was just the end of the year before, was it, Liz, I think, wasn't it? And they only recorded line clearance deviations if they got a complaint back from the marketplace. Can you believe? I mean, all that pyramid that Liz talked about earlier on, all the bottom of that pyramid, that base, there was no record of that at all. There was no record of critical deviations found inside the factory. The only records that they kept was when they got a complaint back from the marketplace. We work with a company, worked with them for 10 long years now, which has a system of classifying every rogue according to 4 categories, you know, according to seriousness and according to the type. And they monitor it closely and they monitor it continuously. They are focusing on the base of that pyramid because they know if they focus on the base, they can get rid of that top. They can make it a very thin pyramid indeed. And they have just, I'll show you some data from them later on this afternoon, throughout the whole of 2007, they didn't even have one single rogue incident of any sort whatsoever. So why should we capture this data? All right, well, the first thing is it's a regulatory requirement. I mean, I can ask Petra or I can ask Kevin, and I'm sure they'd not tolerate any company, you know, failing to record deviations in the event of line clearance failures. But it's also a very useful thing for improving things. If you use the data properly and act upon it, you can drive continuous improvement. And it does help you start to see trends developing. When things are deteriorating, you need to know about them well in advance, not wait until you've had the rogue incident. We like to see them. I mentioned the company that had 4 classifications. Okay, that's fine. We think 3 are fine, critical, major and minor. But you should have definitions for each based on theoretical examples, you know, what might go wrong or what you would regard as very critical on this particular line or in your particular packaging department, and also on real incidents where you have found 3 or 4 tablets stuck or something, you know, and it caused great consternation and heart searching before you released a batch. But the key message about it is use the information available and don't ignore that very useful data. Now, Kevin alluded to, we've not used the same term because never thought of it till now, until he said it, but the concept of near misses, and I guess what we're talking about here is near misses. When you do the checking, it's not a deviation if you find a product or component, because that's what the checking process is there for. It is there to recover those things that were missed on the clean, right? So it's not a deviation, that's why we do it. But the same classification system can be used as you use for your deviations, and there's one thing you know. You find something on the checking, you know that the clean was not effective. You don't know what you missed on the check. Should you repeat the clean? Should you repeat the check? You know something's gone wrong. Where do you stop on all of that? It needs to be thought through, and we'll explain a bit more about that this afternoon. But the important thing, again, I've put it into red there, data should be captured and used to drive improvement. Because if you go back to the pyramid that Liz put up this morning, we can widen out the base of that pyramid even further and go down below the minor GMP deviations for line clearance, you know, where you found the one tablet underneath the pallet at the edge of the packaging area and you put it down as a minor because